In regards to the Karbonis of the Nesiim, Rashi explains on the second day of the Karbonis of the second Nasi, in the name of Rav Moshe Adarshan, he goes in and explains different Ramazim hints to what the Nasi had in mind with each one of the Karbonis. And Rashi explains that the silver bowls corresponding to the years of Adam Arishain, the Mizrak, a special silver basin, also a type of bowl corresponding to Noach, Kaf Achas, one spoon, a golden spoon corresponding to Torah that was given from Hashem. He then goes on and he speaks about the par, the bull, the ram, the sheep corresponding to the Avos, the Seir Izim, the goat corresponding to Yosef, Shalomim, that was came from two cattle corresponding to Moshe and Aaron. He then goes on to speak about the rams and the male goats, the sheep corresponding to Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim, and so on. Now, why is it that Rashi generally needs to bring these sorts of Ramazim and Drushim if usually Rashi is al derech hapshat? And if yes, why is he only saying it on the second day? So the Rebbe says that this is really because of the question of why is it that the Torah is repeating exactly the same karbonos and donations for each one of the Nesiim. So when you have on the first day, it's not a question yet. On the second day, when you see it being repeated, it becomes a question. But the Rebbe asks, we need to understand, obviously the Nesiim are not just bringing various different items corresponding to different themes, different ideas. There must be some common denominator, some common theme that includes all of these individual things. And we need to understand what is the common theme over here. So the Rebbe says in the Medrash there is an opinion that the Nesiim are bringing these karbonos corresponding to all the generations from Adam Arishain through Noach and the Avos, etc., all the way to the Mishkan and the mitzvahs that they were commanded. Now, seemingly we could say that Rashi is also taking this particular pattern and this particular explanation. But the question becomes, first of all, as the Maharal says, what's the connection between Adam Arishain and Noach, etc., with the Mizbeach and the Mishkan, with the Chanukas and Mizbeach of the Mishkan and the Yidden? And also says that if we are going according to these generations, in the order, it should have been in order seemingly, but what we find is that between Noach and Avram, it speaks about the Kaf Achas, that one golden spoon that corresponds to the Torah, and Aseres Hadibros, etc., etc. Some more questions. The Rebbe says, Rashi brings seemingly two different Ramazim, both regarding the Torah and the Aseres Hadibros. When it comes to the Kaf Achas, that one golden spoon, Rashi says it refers to the Torah that's given from the Kaf, from the hand of Hashem. Asorozov, its weighs of 10 golden shekel, it corresponds to 10, represents the Aseres Hadibros. So we have the Torah and the Aseres Hadibros. Then when it comes to the three categories of Elim, Atudim, and Kvosim, rams, male goats, and sheep, Rashi tells us it corresponds to Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. So we have Torah again. Rashi then goes on and says from each one of these, they brought five of each one of these animals, corresponding to the 5 Chumashim, and to the 5 Dibros that are on one of the Luchas, the 5 Dibros on the other Luach. So again we have the Aseres HaDibros twice. What's the point of both Torah and the Aseres HaDibros? Two different Ramazim. Then Rashi says, Elim, Tudim, and Kvosim, these three different categories, correspond, says Rashi, corresponding to Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim, and to Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. It sounds like these aren't two separate Pirushim. Rashi doesn't say Davar Acher, but rather that it hints to both things. That these three animals correspond to Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim, and to Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. Well, that would then be 6 things, not 3 things. The Rebbe continues analyzing the Rashi. When Rashi explains why each one of these 3 things, which we said already correspond to Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, why each one comes 5 of them, Rashi says they correspond to the Chamisha Chumshei Torah, and corresponding to the 5 Dibros on each one of the Luchos. Now the Rebbe says, clearly these 3 things that we just mentioned, the Chamisha Chumshei Torah and the Aseres HaDibros, are not the same as, they're not connected to the previous 3 things that we said these 3 animals correspond to Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim. These are all part of the category of Torah. So when Rashi is now telling us that these 5 correspond to the Chumashim and the Aseres HaDibros, it sounds now like these 3 animals, or 3 categories of animals, and are now giving us another hint to the idea of Torah. So the question is, why do we need another hint in the area of Torah if we already said the 3 categories are Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim? Another point, says the Rebbe. When Rashi says that we have the 5 Chumashim and the 5 Dibros on each one of the Luchos, it seems quite clear that Rashi does not mean the Dibros the way they are on the stone Luchos, but rather we mean the Aseres HaDibros the way they're written in Chumash, the way they're written in Torah. And the Rebbe explains because of the order. The Chumash The Aseres HaDibros and the Luchos we've got before the Chumashim. But Rashi first says the Chumashim and then the Aseres HaDibros. The 5 on one luach and 5 on the other. So clearly he doesn't mean the Luchos the way they're given on stone. Rather the way they are in Chumash. And why is it 5 and 5? The reason why they're on two separate stones is because they're different categories of mitzvahs. Either that some of them are mitzvahs aseh and some mitzvahs lois aseh. The Rebbe explains how even the lois aseh and the first group are really part of Anochi Hashem Elokecha, or that the first category is ben adam lamokim and the second category ben adam lachaveiroi. So here we have again another question. If we have already a remez to Torah generally, and even to the 5 Chumashim, why do we now need another remez to the Aseres HaDibros, which are part of the 5 Chumashim? All of this, as the Rebbe will understand, by prefacing one more question. Why is it b'chlal relevant about the bowls and the different containers and how much they weighed and how much they were worth and so on? Why is all of that relevant over here? And we even start off with that. And the Rebbe explains. It makes sense to say that when the karbanos that are being brought now by the Nesiim for the Chanukas HaMizbeach are really coming to bring out what is the main chidush that's happening in the Mishkan and in the Mizbeach compared to the karbanos the way they used to be brought once upon a time. And that is that in the Mizbeach there is the concept of Hashroas HaShchina, the Shchina coming down in the most revealed way, the fire coming down and consuming the karbanos. And therefore, says the Rebbe like this, what the Nefsiim were trying to bring out in their gifts and karbanos is to emphasize the difference the way things used to be before the Mishkan and the way they are now. And this is highlighted by the two groups, the two categories of what they're bringing. There is the kalim, the vessels, the bowls that they're bringing, and the flour and the incense inside of that, which are all not from the category of chai, of animals. Furthermore, in this group, we don't see clearly how there's a major change happening by them when they're brought on, that they're being brought and they're being offered up and being consumed by the fire. And therefore, this is generally a hint to the karbanos the way they used to be before the times of the Mishkan, which was more like a lifeless thing. It's not so much about bringing the chayis, the kedusha, the shechina into the world. And then we have the next group, which is going to highlight the main chiddush that happens through the Mishkan, that there is hashras hashchina in the items, it becomes an item of kedusha, and this is represented by the animals, the oilo, the chatas, the shlamim, which are first of all being changed by the fact when they are brought, sprayed, sprinkled on the mizbeach, being consumed by the fire, and also that they are animals which have much more chayis, in other words, representing that there's a chayis coming into the world now. The Yidden are taking from things that are inanimate objects and bringing them, making them alive with the chayis of Kedusha. This is the main two categories within these karbonos that Rashi is speaking about and the karbonos are hinting to. Now, although we said it starts with the Yidden now in the Mishkan, but really, where do we start seeing this connection of the Kedusha coming into physical items? This really started with Avraham Avinu, who had the Bris Milah. So now we can understand what Rashi is saying and the order. The karbonos that are more of the doimim in Tzomeach, they are all hinting to Adam HaRishon and his age, his years, his children, Noach, the Goyim, the 70 nations, which in their karbonos we don't see so much this idea of chayis in a revealed way, this concept of Ashroas Hashchina. In other words, because it's coming again from Doimim Tzemech, we don't see life. It represents that there's no life yet of Kedusha permeating the Gashmiistic world. But the karbonos that are more the animals, this is going to be the hint to the Yidden, starting with Avraham Avinu, the Avos, where we start seeing the concept of Shechina in a more revealed way. The only thing is that this makes even a bigger question on the Kaf Achas, on that one golden spoon, which is a spoon coming from Doimim filled with Ktoiris, which is Tzomeach. How can we say that that's referring to the Torah and the Aseres HaDibros and the Taryag Mitzvos, the Kaf is Torah, and the fact that it was Asara, Zov is Aseres HaDibros, and Malay Ktoiris is representing the Taryag Mitzvos? So the Rebbe says, Kaf Achas, as Rashi says, is Kaf is also from the word of a hand, representing it's coming from the hand of the Eibishter. This is mainly referring to the Luchais that given from Hashem himself. And the Asara Zov, that it weighs 10 golden shekel, or gold weighing 10 shekel, is corresponding to the Aseres HaDibros in the Luchos, and Malaya Ktoires is, we said Ktoires is related to Taryag Mitzvahs. That means to say we're speaking about the Aseres HaDibros and Taryag Mitzvahs, the way they're part of the Luchos, the way Hashem gives it. So the bottom line is we're speaking about the way Hashem is giving the Torah. That means coming Milamayla. We know that the Giluyim, the way things come Milamayla, are not really changing the world yet. They're not really the ones that are making Kedusha penetrate the world and become a permanent in the world, like Har Sinai itself, that didn't remain holy after Matan Torah. And that's why this kaf achas comes between Avraham and Noach, between Noach and Avraham. In other words, it's still within the first category. It's still before we enter the realm of chai, the animals, which are going to correspond to the way that things are by the avos and through avoida and so on. Obviously, within this category itself, it's zav, it's gold, representing that it's much higher than the previous levels of Adam and Noach, etc., which are all things made of silver, because it's clearly a gili coming from Hashem. Says the Rebbe, now we could look at the three categories of the animals of Elim, Atudim, and Kvasim, which we said is Koyanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim, and Torah, Neviim, and Ksuvim. We said, isn't that six things? So the Rebbe is explaining, because now we're not speaking anymore about the Torah, and we want to know why do we need extra Ramazim for Torah, because now we're no longer speaking about the Torah the way it's Torah from Hashem on its own. We're speaking about the way the Yidden are becoming one with the Torah, the way the Yidden are receiving the Torah. And therefore, there's only three things. There's the Koyanim, Leviim, and Yisraelim, but the way they're one with Torah, Neviim, and Ksuvim, one with Torah. And this fits very much with what Rashi said before this on Shlomim. Bakar Shnayim, Rashi says it corresponds to Moshe and Aaron, that makes Shalom from the word Shalom, between Hashem and the Yidden, because we're speaking over here specifically about the Chiddush of Matan Torah, that Yidden are becoming one with Hashem through the Torah. Says the Rebbe, now we could also understand why Rashi then follows immediately and explains these three groups of five, the five Chumashim, and the five Dibros on one Luach, five on the other Luach, which represents division within Torah and mitzvahs. Meaning to say like this, how it comes from Hashem, we said it's kaf achas, it's one spoon, which means the way it's coming from Hashem, like the Aseres HaDibros, we all heard Hashem say it in one saying. This is the way, when it's coming from Hashem, it says one inyan altogether. But the way the Yidden receive it, now we're speaking about the way the Yidden are receiving, that's where the real change happens in the world. Now there's division. In Torah there's the five Chumashim, and similarly in mitzvahs, there are five Dibros in one of the Luchais, and five Dibros on the other Luach, meaning to say, as we said before, that this is the way mitzvahs are already divided into the concept of positive and negative and so on, because it's all more the way the Yidden are accepting the mitzvahs.